And now it's time for the EVEN 2022 first power panel discussion. And our first power panel today is going to talk about innovations to be actioned in the EV space in the next 3 years and why. To participate in this discussion, please welcome on stage Mr. Rajiv K. Vij, Chairman and MD, Cars on Rent, which operates a fleet of over 10,000 cars across India, providing chauffeur-driven as well as cars on a self-drive basis under the Cars on Rent and Miles brands. An alumnus of the Faculty of Management Studies, Mr. Vij can be credited with contributing to the growth and expanded reach of global car rental concepts across India, helping to attract global players and marquee investors in the space. The fact that he has set up and achieved market leadership in a short period of time speaks volumes about his strengths and abilities as a successful entrepreneur. Welcome, sir. I would also like to invite Mr. Nishant Arya, Vice Chairman, JBM Group. Mr. Arya. Mr. Arya represents the face of today's young and dynamic business leaders, an alumnus of Bradford University, UK, and the London School of Economics. He has conceptualized an end-to-end e-mobility ecosystem indigenously designed by JBM for faster deployment of electric vehicles. He currently leads multiple portfolios in several industry bodies, including ASSOCHAM, National Green Mobility Council, BRICS Global Green Mobility Council, ACMA, EV and Future Mobility, and SIAM. Please also welcome Mr. Vadiraj Katti, MD, iTriangle Infotech. With 30 years of experience in the domains of finance, technology, HR, sales, and marketing, Mr. Katti has been conceptualizing and designing products and solutions in telematics, automotive, and telecommunications. He is actively engaged with government agencies and policymakers to develop and introduce robust, secure standards for the implementation of IoT and telematics in India. Mr. Katti is the Vice Chair for the Telematics Sub-Pillar of ACMA and Vice President, Telematics Association of India. With a team of highly motivated professionals, Mr. Katti has been instrumental in making iTriangle Infotech the largest Indian manufacturer of vehicle telematics hardware. Welcome, sir. Also part of our first panel is Mr. Vinkesh Gulati, President, FADA. A law graduate with a master's in commerce and business management, Mr. Vinkesh Gulati is managing partner at United Automobiles, one of the largest selling Bajaj two-wheeler dealerships in India, and also a treasurer of ASDC and member of the National Executive Committee of FICCI. He has been regularly recognized by Mahindra and is a member of the Dealer Council. Mr. Gulati is Senior Vice President of the United Group of Institutions in Allahabad and Greater Noida, which offer medical engineering, management, and computer degrees. He is a director in United Bharat, a Hindi daily, and chapter chairman of the Indian Industry Association. Welcome, sir. Please also welcome Mr. Anil Srivastav, IAS, former Principal Advisor, Niti Aayog. Mr. Anil Srivastav is an IIT and IIM alumnus with more than 30 years of work experience in senior level positions with both central and state governments of India. He has an MA from Maxwell School of Public Policy and Citizenship, has also pursued a PhD in social science and attended an executive education program at Harvard. Mr. Srivastav has also served on the boards of Air India and Airports Authority of India and represented and led Indian delegations to various high-level international conferences. An expert on e-vehicles and mobility transportation-related issues, He has been a distinguished speaker at WRI and World Bank Group events, as well as at various international conferences. Welcome, sir. I would also like to invite Mr. Ivy Rao, Senior Visiting Fellow, TERI, former Head R&D, Maruti Suzuki. Mr. Rao, as an SIAM representative, has made significant contributions in the area of auto fuel policy, emissions and safety standards, electric mobility and international harmonization of regulations at various ministries. At Maruti Suzuki, he made significant contributions in the area of technology transfer, new product planning and development, component localization, quality assurance and service, and manufacturing engineering functions. Mr. Rao was chairman of SAE India Northern Section and has contributed extensively to its activities, leading the SAE India Foundation as president. And also, please welcome Mr. Anuj Guglani, CEO, WAF Group, who will also moderate the discussion. Over to you, Anuj.
Check. Thanks a ton, Anita ma'am, and thanks a ton, fellow panelists. I think we couldn't have asked for a better set of panelists for this very important and literally burning topic. So, Electric Vehicles Innovators Network, friends, is a group of people who are on a mission to make things better, who don't get discouraged or bowed down by things which are happening or challenges which we are facing, but to find better solutions, transform lives through innovation. And that's what this panel is all about, transforming lives through innovation. Safety, security, sustainability, green mobility. So our topic over here is, how do we action those innovations? Innovations are fine, but we need to action them. So how do we action the innovations? And we have, just like we have targets, we have KRAs. So within 3 years, so not 6 months, not 10 years, but in next 3 years, what are our plans? How should we be actioning the EV dream? And it's a very complex challenge. I would not call it problem, but it's a complex challenge, complex improvement area. On one side, you have the battery. You have exploding batteries, batteries catching fire. Why only two-wheeler? Why not other form factors? Complicated problem. What should be the approach? What should be the solution? Then come to the EV manufacturing, come to the Make in India for the world. The viability of such manufacturing facilities, viability of selling EVs, retailing, viability of getting them serviced and maintained. If I have to go to some town or some city far away, am I having that confidence I can take an EV? What is the level and scope of skilling? Does the person and the workshop know that basics that I have to ensure the earthing in the bay for the vehicle so that there is no short circuit? So a lot of things are open, lot of open issues. Then coming to the consumer, is the consumer ready? All these incidents which are happening, customer is stepping back and watching. You know, we are seeing the sales figures in the industry. So how does it pan out? So to begin the discussion, if I can invite in this discussion a person who has transformed shared mobility in the country, who runs one of the biggest car rental companies in the country, who can actually tell us, you know, what it requires at the ground level for the consumers to accept and for the shared mobility to adopt EV. So with Saab, if you can begin with some wisdom which you can share, what are the things which you feel are the clogs or the problems and how we should overcome them?
Thank you, Anuj. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this very, very interesting discussion and you know, to be part of this panel. You know, this transition to EV fleets, and particularly the commercial fleets, I think that's something which I have been wanting to do for a while, and I'll just share with you as to what all I have learned over this period. This was, I think, about 4 years back that I first thought, yeah, you know, we have spread enough pollution in the country So let's now try and move to a mode where we start saving emissions. Um, and if you remember, about 4 years back is the time when the first large tender was issued by EESL, and suddenly some vehicles were manufactured by existing OEMs. But to say it mildly, I think those vehicles were limited in their performance. And therefore they were also limited in what kind of use cases they could be used for. And you know, we were very uncomfortable in getting into a space where the vehicle itself is not capable of servicing the kind of use cases that we service for our customers. And so we stayed away from that at that point of time, and I think the rest, of course, is history as to what happened to those vehicles, and you know how good they performed, because the fact is that over the last 3 years from then, the total number of vehicles which came into the country, even though there was great government support, was about 2,000, 2,500 vehicles that came in over a 3 years period. And you know, they were also used for one particular kind of use case, which allowed them to be charged every time that the car has run about 40, 50 kilometers, because the car is sitting idle. And you know, that's not the best way that you use an EV. So we decided to stay away through that period. We of course looked at converting existing fleets. We also looked at getting some OEM to manufacture or assemble vehicles only for us. But some of those things I think were not very practical, and you know, we also finally decided that we will look at waiting for the right kind of vehicles to come. The good thing is, over the last 1 year or a little more than a year, better vehicles have started coming in. Of course, some of the OEMs have also been a little concerned as to which vehicle they want to offer to the commercial fleet business and which model they don't want to offer, because you know, OEMs have their own concerns on what impact this will have on their brand if they were to position it as you know, as they call it, a taxi instead of a private vehicle. I personally have my opinion on that, but that's not important because OEMs take their own calls on those issues. But I think those things are also changing. And last year sometime, you know, our board, because we are a private equity invested company, and you know, the board mandated that we will transition 100% of our fleet during the financial year 22-23. And so we started working from then on, forging partnerships with charging infrastructure companies, forging partnerships with financial institutions, forging partnerships, of course, with OEMs, and you know, the good thing is that some of them have been friends for a long time, so that was comparatively easier. But also forging partnerships with the used car industry, because you need an ecosystem, and you know, that ecosystem is something which has been missing. You also needed to develop technologies which were very specific to operation of an EV vehicle. How do you integrate your technology with the IoTs of the vehicle? How do you get all the data from the vehicle in terms of what is the SOC, the charge status of the battery? How is the battery management system operating? All of those, and you know, also how is your technology going to ensure that when you are allocating a particular trip to a particular car, how is your algorithm going to work in terms of allocating that trip? How is it going to also help and assist the driver to go to a particular charging station, make the booking for that charging station, get the charge, etc., etc. So we've been doing all of those things. And we've also done some pilots during this period along with our partners for the charging infrastructure, which is Fortham. The good thing is that we have been able to, in that process, we have done a few thousand transactions, trips for our customers, and customers have been extremely happy. You know, the greatest part is that, and you know, we service almost 600 large corporates across India, besides airports, hotels, airlines, etc. customers have been extremely keen to transition to EV.
That was the point which I was about to ask. That on one side, we are doing our homework,
Yeah.
we're getting our house in order. What is the response from the consumer?
I think the problem is about availability. The problem is not that the customer is not ready. If I had a few thousand cars in my fleet, I could transition all my customers into taking services from EV fleets. Because what have we done? We have gone to them and we have shared with them that in the pre-pandemic year, which was 1920, what was the number of kilometers that our cars ran for their servicing, and if those cars had ran on EV, how many CO2 emissions would they have saved? And that's the end. We have done nothing else because they are existing customers. And that itself is so large because our cars ran about 17 million kilometers in the 1920 year. So each of the large customers has a possibility of saving very large number of emissions and achieve their ESG targets, achieve their carbon neutrality targets, etc. So they are all keen, and they are all getting now from their global headquarters for India, they are all getting now pushed to achieve those targets. So they are ready. The fleets, unfortunately, because of the current situation where not many cars are still available, there is also a waiting list, chip shortage, etc., etc. So all of those issues are there. But we are still, as I said, we are still committed to transitioning completely
Fair
to
enough.
an EV
Fair
fleet
enough.
by March of 23.
That's really very heartening to know that if you can do 100% transformation, and I believe it will be fueled mostly by the corporates and the big targets that they have internationally, not just by that single retail one-off customer, walk-in customer sort of a thing.
Yeah, so Anuj, because our customers are institutional customers, we don't have a large private individual customer base, but airports are wanting to transition completely to having EV fleets. Hotels are wanting to transition to EV fleets. Airlines are wanting services with EV fleets. I think they are all wanting relevant products. They are all wanting service providers who have the necessary wherewithal in terms of technology, in terms of the ecosystem to support that operation so that their operations must not suffer. They are not even asking, and while this will help them make some savings in addition to the CO2 emissions, but they are not even talking about savings. They are saying, fine, you can service me at the same prices because we understand your initial capital cost is going to be high on an EV car. But what we want to make sure is that we can convert. And even if you convert to us at the same kind of costing, we are fine.
Fair enough, fair enough. That's really heartening to know that at least the institutions would surely be the prime mover, the driver for adoption of EVs, and they'll surely set an example. As always, they are the early adopters because of their international guidelines and targets. So switching gears now and coming to the promoter, the driver of a company. In fact, I remember Auto Expo 2020 when we had a booth and I had gone to have an interview with him. So he asked me, where do we do it? I said, you are on the driver's seat of your organization, so why not the driver's seat of your vehicle? So he actually sat on the driver's seat of his bus, and that's where we had an interaction, and it went viral. So I'm talking about Mr. Nishant Arya, and I really have very deep respect for him, his family, his company, because his is one of those very rare examples where an auto component player has transformed into not just an automaker, but a global automaker. You cannot think of any other company which might have done that. That too under a decade. It's really phenomenal. So Mr. Arya, talking about the challenges, so one is from the consumer side, shared mobility. But what about the challenges of EV production? You are into such a big vehicle, and EcoLife is your bus. You had also won our WAF award for best innovation last year. What are the challenges which come in manufacturing, distributing and selling an electric bus?
No, happy to be here, Anush. And I think it is the ecosystem which operates, so all of us playing different parts of the ecosystem, which is so very important here. As an organization, what we feel is that how constantly we are pushing ourselves to move forward at a very fast pace and not following benchmarks but creating benchmarks in the segment where technology is driving value. I think that technology driving value is what differentiates us in our total ecosystem approach. So when we look at that, so today we have facilities which manufacture and can manufacture more than 3,000 buses per year. But what we are doing now is that over a period of time, we are enhancing, we are investing in vehicle technology, charging technology, battery technology, power electronics, and manufacturing capacity, and looking forward to creating a very well digitized, focused on human ergonomics, highest level of safety, platinum rated infrastructure, which we are in the midst of creating and we'll be sharing with you very soon, which will be one of its kind of a facility in times to come. But over and above that, when we are looking at vehicles, last 3 years, we have seen the adoption, including the 2 years of pandemic, that the adoption of EV has enhanced substantially because we all understand the importance of health and environment. So it's not that you have to sell EV, as he also clearly mentioned, that people are really seeing that as their own responsibility when they are using electric vehicles. And why it is so very important in case of buses, because 90% of our population uses buses. Today they use buses, and earlier on they were using buses because that was a need, but we have tried to see how we transition to a choice which they make when they're using these vehicles. So at the same time, affordability, safety and comfort, luxury ride-like comfort is very important for them. And that is when I think all modes of transportation would coexist. But in this case, they would have very comfortable transportation. When different because we work with corporates, airports, STUs who are using our vehicles for their staff transportation, for public transportation, for school transportation, and many other applications. So we clearly see that slowly they are coming to understand, as companies are having their own ESG goals. They are trying to see that how global organizations are complying to certain emission targets. And in different cities, the challenges which we face is around power infrastructure, because electric bus has a high voltage current. But we have come up with off-grid solutions. We have come up with many other solutions which customers are able to use now. And basis that the penetration is increasing multifold. One of the recent studies which Nomura did, which I saw, that, and it is bang on from your 3-year perspective, that today the penetration is less than 1% because India as a country has 1.8 million buses. But in next 3 to 4 years, they see that going to 25% kind of penetration for the new buses coming in the market. So that clearly demonstrates the kind of opportunity one has to really see that how as a country we are becoming totally self-reliant from manufacturing to technology to engineering and energy security, which is an even bigger subject on top of this. And clearly understanding how we are creating jobs. But the biggest challenge here is, again, if you talk about challenges, skill development, the people who are available. Otherwise, people keep moving around from one company to another in the same ecosystem. The idea is not to do that, but enhance the total pool for the whole industry and country at large.
So talking about skilling, it's a very important and a burning topic. So in your view, what would be the percentage of technicians, mechanics across the country who would actually be skilled on operating on an EV or an electric bus?
So today, I would say less than 1,000 people, less than 1,000 people.
Across the country?
Across the country, less than 1,000 people. Whereas if we would just add a zero, then the penetration could go 5x in the next year itself.
Wow, just imagine.
So, but the dearth of the right set of people, which gives the confidence to end customers, what is important. That is why at our end, we are trying to do our bit in a big way, setting up about 7, 8 different skill development centers across the country, which are training people on EV and churning out thousands of people every year who are able to do that. But on-job training and theoretical training both are equally important for them to be employable on day one.
So something on this, Mr. Arya, when it comes to, see, all these technicians are already trained and skilled on ICE. Isn't it a bit easier or much easier to operate on an electric vehicle compared to ICE, which is much more complicated?
No, definitely what you're saying is right to the point from a mechanical standpoint, the number of moving parts getting reduced, but the kind of power electronics, the kind of high voltage systems you have where the delicacy is very high, the sensitivity of the system is very high, and it has to be handled with a lot of care, and safety becomes a very important element there. I think those things, otherwise, as you were talking about fire incidents and other incidents, that is not only in two-wheelers. In some bus OEMs
Buses
also,
too. True.
those incidents have happened in India and overseas. So one has to see that how you are having that constant training mechanism for people to enhance their skills, because technology is the only is evolutionizing and changing on a constant basis. So what was good yesterday doesn't hold any value today. So what we were using in 2020, we are not using today in
Fair enough.
22.
So I think that gets us to a very important caveat for the entire industry, that we cannot just cut, copy, paste power systems, normal power systems in automotive or in the EV application. We have to be very sensitized and sensitive to its application, especially when safety and security are concerned.
Absolutely. And over and above that, you know, what is equally essential is that how are you able to see that people coming from different backgrounds today? I see that in many cases, people see that if you are electronics engineer, only then you can do something like this. I think those barriers have been broken in many ways. And now people coming from different backgrounds, understanding whether, and people coming from different industries, you said automotive. So that was a similar mindset because I personally come from automotive sector, but people coming from power sector, from renewable sector, from railway sector, and many other areas have been able to do a fantastic job because they understand the power segment better may not be the automotive application. So everybody has different sets of expertise. If it is pulled together, it can give fantastic results, and that's what we've tried to do over a period of time.
Spot on. Couldn't agree more. I remember when I joined General Motors 18 years back, and I was in the washroom, and instantly my MD was right next to me. And while we were in the washroom, in the middle of the act, he asked me, Anuj, why can't we compare or benchmark our dealership teams with that of Jet Airways? Well, at that time, Jet Airways was just right at the top. So yeah, you don't have to just stick to your industry. You can always be agnostic, learn the best practices from every industry, and make it safer, better, greener. Safety most important. So switching gears over there and getting in the conversation, a person who's transforming the dealer fraternity, who's working selflessly for the dealers, and we keep seeing so many actions that he's taking with his team for the dealer fraternity. So getting Vinkesh ji in the conversation. So Vinkesh ji, already the industry is stressed, the dealers are stressed, dealer viability, sales, bottom line, top line, all kinds of line have gone the Tambola way. So when EV sales come in, what are the metrics for an EV dealer viability? If you can throw some light on that.
Thanks, Anuj. Very pertinent question, and I remember talking during the coffee break with on this only. See, practically, the dealership fraternity has grown up with a thinking that sales are normally a competition where the discounts, customer satisfaction is more important, and service is where we earn and make the viability or the ends meet for the dealership. And if I talk about the EV dealerships, I'm not referring to the car segment, but the two-wheeler and the three-wheeler segment. Basically now the service earning or the service setup is non-existent. So overall, it's only from the sales, and the kind of margins being currently offered by majority of EV startups are equivalent to what the legacy two-wheeler manufacturers are giving. So means the backup of service is missing, and that is where the major issue is coming if I talk about future dealer fraternity satisfaction. And the major problem what we see if I talk on the dealer front is just not viability. Like Nishant said, it's more of a tech company. Yesterday, Gauravji also said that we are not a manufacturing OEM, we are a tech, what word he used? Auto tech company. The problem is that OEMs being big players, they have a lot of money power, a lot of intelligentsia in their itself. They are easily able to shift from their auto to tech. But the problem is the dealers are still stuck in that auto mode.
Well said, well
So
said.
it's been what, 30, 40 years. Normally our manpower is a person, the senior most manpower would be a person who has started 30 years back as a consultant or as a technician, updated GM service and all that. And they normally understand the same style what we had gone through. It could be originally he was doing petrol vehicle, then diesel vehicle, LPG, CNG, but has never gone through the system of a tech vehicle. Even today, the bigger problem is when you, with MG also, or any OEM, if a vehicle comes for a service,
Gaurav is alert now. Alert mode activated.
so if a vehicle comes for service, out of the, no doubt, they want every technician to do the job, but practically only 20% of the technicians work when an electric failure comes in the vehicle.
Wow, like
So
that.
that's a major issue. So what we are trying to train them, most of the companies are wanting an E-Tech. E-Tech means electric technician. So it's a combination of both, that he can service the vehicle and do the electric checks also. Because for the past, I feel 2-3 years, the vehicles have become very complex. The kind of connected vehicle, the kind of advanced features the vehicles are having. A normal technician can only service the part of the engine, suspension and all that. As it comes to places where the diagnostic has to be done, you need a senior person. A normal technician normally avoids doing. And the bigger problem is he is so much scared of that he's not wanting to learn about that also. Whereas we have trained them that you will be not there in future, you will extinct. But still the issue is that. So that is the problem, because auto companies are shifting themselves easily towards tech, but the dealership and the dealership fraternity still treat the same way how it is.
So what can be the solution to this very important gap, as you have rightly, spotted?
Obviously, everything is at dealerships are controlled by OEMs. It's not our duty, it's their duty to at least upgrade the full.
Abhi tea break nahi hai.
So I'm sorry, I'm like that, I'm blunt. So
He has a keynote just after this panel, so he's listing all his points.
So obviously there are a lot of, like I told you, they expect at least 33% or 40% of E-Techs to be there in our technicians, but on an average you will find only 20%. There is a dearth of manpower able to do both. We can easily find electricians coming in, but technicians who want to become electrician, that's a problem what we are facing. It's not that we don't want to, it's the problem of availability there. I'll add to the skilling answer what you asked from Nishant. Being a part of ASDC, I am involved somewhere. So ASDC has already partnered with ISIE, Imperial Society of Innovative Engineers, and they've done already 6,000-7,000 of electro engineers training
That's
already.
nice for starts.
Yeah, it's been what, 1 or 2 years they've started all this. So they are doing other courses also, but some courses which are tied up with ASDC, they are doing it. And we have lately tied up with Toyota Kirloskar Motors for EV Shiksha, which is an online course also. But even informing you that that's not enough, because if
surely
you
not
talk
enough,
of, we are what, 25,000 dealership, and if I talk of only the technician parts, there would be some 4 lakh or 5 lakh technician, and some thousands don't suffice. So a lot of things to do there, but yes, we are on the right track. That's it.
True. I think possibly some R&R over here. I remember, during my OEM days, Honda, General Motors, I was managing training, in between. So we would get a lot of requests from technicians if they would not get their training passport on time. Sir, मेरा passport नहीं आया, मेरा passport नहीं आया. ठीक है यार, it's just a training passport. It's not a real passport. They would say, sir, it's actually a real passport. I can get placed in the Middle East based on this passport. I just need to fax it. उस time fax होता था. So if there is some R&R involved, you start going up in stages in value, or in some designation, your incentives or some reimbursement, or your monetary terms are linked to it. They just might go beyond that fear. डर के आगे जीत है, डर के आगे passport है, something like that. So somewhere, some tipping point is required for them to loosen up, lose their fear, and just go for it. Because it's the future. It's inevitable. ये नहीं करोगे तो पीछे रह जाओगे. Like 100 years back, the people used to pick up the horse shit from the roads. 100 years back, they lost their job because there was no more horse carriages. There were motor cars. They suddenly were jobless because that's what their job was. So we are at that tipping point, and I think skilling would make all the difference. All the difference. So switching gears there again, and I would like to come to a gentleman whom I saw at the Move Summit by Niti Aayog. Our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, was just listening to him and no one else. He was all ears for this gentleman, and he was explaining everything with the right poise and confidence and knowledge. And he has been principal, in the EV policy of our country, various things, battery swapping, this, that. So getting Shivasav ji in the conversation. So sir, you have been instrumental in the EV policy making for our country. You are seeing all these incidents happen, industry, consumers stepping back. The battery standards are coming out, battery swapping standards draft is already there. High-level committees have been set up. What is your take on the EV revolution? How you think we can go forward in a responsible way next 3 years?
Thanks, Anuj, and fond remembrance of a very high-profile event which we organized in this country, and we set the agenda for. I remember 5 years back, nearly 5 years back, when we started this narrative about adoption and the promotion of electric vehicles. Now, and a very timely discussion, Anuj, I must compliment you for that. Next 3 years, yes, we have been setting the agenda and the think tank, and now I am in a position where I can even be a little bit of critical about as to what the government should be doing and as to what the government is
So
not
that's
doing.
why we got you here, sir. Please be critical.
Yes, yes. So, being on the other side of the table and now probably in the middle of the table, I don't know where am I right now. Yeah, not really on the other side of the table also. But yes, very timely discussion, and the innovation or the action has to be India-centric, let me tell you. And I would say a few things that all the stakeholders have to come out with their action agendas, because you have very rightly chosen the very appropriate members of this panel, those who are talking about all the aspects of the adoption of and success of the electric vehicles in the country. So, and very timely, yesterday only the draft for the swapping policy has come, and we used to talk about it for years in the think tank as to what the swapping policy should be there. Some of the key things which come to my mind as to should be kept in mind is that number one is that delinking the vehicle with the battery or delinking the vehicle with the source of energy is going to be a game changer, no doubt about it. And in the ICE, we never talked about the cost of the source of energy, but now it so happened that we started pondering over the cost of the battery, whereas the vehicle has to be dealing with the battery, and that will certainly be a game changer in the adoption and in the I don't know how the bus manufacturers, how the OEM manufacturers, how the two-wheeler, three-wheelers are going to adopt it and come forward with their own market business models, which are going to be different. So that is one thing which comes to my mind. And then regarding the innovations, also the incentives have to be slightly delinked with the only with the kilowatt hour. It has to be something more. As to it has been rightly talked about the dangers or the fear which is there because of the fires which have come out, and you have already spoken about it, and primarily for the two-wheeler. But then again, we have to have incentives linked with something more than the kilowatt hour that the government has to think about. On the other hand, for what the other parties should be thinking about is that how we have a India-centric battery management system. That is also probably, it's not, it's very easy to just import a vehicle, which used to happen. Now that the changes are taking place in the things, just import a two-wheeler from another country and sell it to the Indian consumer. That is not going to work. That the industry has realized, and that what modifications have to be done in the business battery management systems, and then how do we connect the the various vehicles, that is also irrespective of that is the agnostic of the OEMs. How do we connect the vehicle? That is also going to be very critical if we want to have this kind of adoption, which is planned in the government and which we used to think about in the Niti Aayog or in the government places. So these are some of the things which are very much needed. The connected vehicle and then the standardizations which the government has not been able to do, not only in terms of the physical aspects of the battery, but even the standardizations of the charging protocols. We used to talk about it, I remember, more than 4 years back. Now that the kind of standardizations which have to be there, because India itself offers huge size and the market to build upon and then go global on that. So these are the very timely actions which are needed to be done, taken by the various stakeholders in this EV segment.
So, Anil sir, one quick question over here, now that you can be a little critical. So, see, a lot of work happens at Niti Aayog. Really hats off, I have personally seen very closely. I've interacted with so many officials. They are burning the midnight oil. They're working day and night for the improvement, advancement of our country, for mobility, for many other, areas. But whatever strategies, policies, papers get published, and how it gets percolated at the ground level, there's a gap. How do you propose that gap can be minimized?
Now, this is EV policies and the policies which various departments and the ministries have come out, nearly 20-25 different policies. We used to get the compliment from the industry and the other stakeholders that probably for the first time and in the only area in which the government is moving faster than the industry or some of the other stakeholders. Now the gap should ideally be not there, and we used to have multiple interactions in the various groups with the industry. Now, as I look at it, pandemic might have played some role in that kind of interaction, but yes, of course, the interactions were there, even the online and without physical interaction. But yes, of course, there has to be no gap in that, because the government is moving pretty fast, and the two policies which have come out, one is the scrapping policy, and the other one is which is in the offering, that is the leasing policy or the different business models for the energy source, the policy related with that. Those two things are the landmarks. Now this gap is to be reduced, and as I look at it, yes, of course, I don't see that there were many gaps in the earlier policy enunciations. No, I won't see. But we were very open, and the government has to be very open in listening to the various stakeholders and the various groups which are there. And we used to accommodate, yes, if you look at it, there are certain, I would classify the different ministries and the departments. Like if you look at the finance ministry and the various aspects of that, then probably there was a time lag and there is a gap which existed. Now today I don't believe it. I mean, still I don't think that why should there be 18% of GST on the lithium-ion batteries? And GST on even the lead-acid batteries is 28%.
I think that battery swapping draft that's mentioned, moving it to 5%.
It has mentioned, but it is after 3 years, we have been trying for it for the last 4 years, that it should be considered, And every country, I mean, I'm again the critical of the government, I mean, not giving any leeway to them. So quickly the policies do get changed in China or in other countries for that matter. The public charging stations were not successful in China, so they scrapped the subsidy on that. Okay. And I said it 2.5 years back. So you have to be a dynamic policy making regime is to be there, which I always used to promote, and even the top leadership of the Niti Aayog is also aware of it, that there has to be a dynamism in the adoption and the policy domain which should be there. Whereas in India we are too rigid, or maybe we take a lot of time in modifying our policies, modifying our things, but that the mindset is changing even in the bureaucracy, and things are moving now faster.
Fair enough, sir, fair enough, and really kudos for that. So now switching gears and now moving to a gentleman who has actually personified the mantra Ghar Ghar Maruti. So when we say Ghar Ghar Maruti, what do we think of? We think of, a model ubiquitously present. We think of a model, in fact, we think of one word, frugal. Whether it is designing, it is producing, it's selling, owning. So frugal, the kitna deti hai, where it comes from. So we're talking about none other but Mr. I.V. Rao, who has been the former R&D head at Maruti Suzuki. So Rao Saab, you are out and out technical person, technical expert of the country, probably one of the best in the world. You're seeing these EV fires. Why only electric two-wheeler? Why not other form factors? If there are 3 things or 5 things which need to be fixed, what should they be?
Thank you. If you're talking about the fires, what we have seen recently in two-wheelers, uh, I have some concern in terms of the amount of evaluation and analysis and testing which has gone into these vehicles before they were launched. Why I'm saying this is accepting 2 or 3 manufacturers, most of the electric two-wheeler or three-wheeler manufacturers are all startups. And whatever interaction I have with startups as a mentor, I feel most of the startups are in a great hurry to take their product to market. And very, very few are very clear about the various stages of development of a model. And in the process, if they are skipping some of the stages and related evaluation of various systems to eliminate the likely problems which will encounter when the product gets fully developed. Why startups, even a big startup which has recently started development of e-models has ended up the same problems because they, to cut short the schedule, they jumped some of the stages and as a result, they ended up with a lot of problems at the end. So I'm not trying to criticize startups, but automotive engineering, when you are developing especially new systems and new models, there are a lot of evaluation and system-wise analysis, system-wise evaluation and durability testing, and also when it gets integrated on the full model level testing, taking into consideration the adverse extreme conditions of environment plus usage conditions in India, need to be studied, and also worst case analysis needs to be done to evaluate the integrity of the whole systems. What may be good for normal industry usage may not be sufficient for auto application. I think this is where there's some gaps.
Fair enough. So what might be good for an industry grade application may or may not be good enough for an automotive application. And I think that's a very important point which the EV makers, most of them which rightly mentioned by Rao Saab, are startups, they need to realize and wake up. And I'm sure the government is, in overdrive, they have unleashed.
Yeah, actually that's also one of the issues, I think. If I go back to the way I see industry, I mean, auto industry has developed, there was enough time for doing the frugal engineering, which is optimizing the engineering designs to suit Indian requirements in terms of usage, etc. And the process of localization of all the aggregates, that's how Maruti has reached 98% local content now. But in case of electric vehicles, I think everybody is in a hurry to do things, and government also is pushing too hard to, to get a better penetration of electric vehicles. So the process of localization, everything takes time. It's almost, minimum 2 to 3 years for localizing various aggregates.
Sure.
Especially it's a totally new technology which we are
Absolutely.
working on now.
Rao Saab, one technical question. I will not mention which EV maker, but amongst the top electric scooter makers of our country, on their website, they had FAQs. They said, we don't use LFP, we use NMC. LFP is bad, LFP is this. Cheap imports from here and there, very unsafe. So someone reached out to the company that you have written all this. He said, hey, that's an old FAQ on our website. We are fully LFP now.
Yeah, actually,
So what is your take on NMC versus LFP?
NFC versus LFP, actually the issue is LFP weight is higher almost by 60% compared to a corresponding NMC. That's one reason why two-wheelers and others have gone for NMC. But the advantage with LFC is that it will not result in any fire accidents or anything.
LFP is safer.
Yes.
What about cost implication?
Cost also, I think, is about some 20 to 30% cheaper. I think.
Cheaper. So it is safer, it is cheaper than. ये तो वही वाली
No,
बात
but
होगी.
weight penalty is there, and because of the energy density, because of which the weight of the battery system will be higher.
So the range gets reduced.
To give an example, if 10 kg is the weight of NMC battery system in a two-wheeler, it will become about 16 to 20 kg when you switch
Okay.
over to LFC. That is the penalty.
Fair enough. All right.
So a lot of people talking about carrying the battery home to charge, etc., will be a big issue if you convert to NMC.
In fact, that was very unfortunate what happened, I think, just yesterday. It was there in the news. 80-year-old octogenarian lost his life because his family took the battery for charging to their home. Come on, he had not signed up for this. So I don't know. I think probably it's a wake-up call. Either there should be regulation on not to take your batteries to your homes for charging till this issue is sorted out.
No, but that is the one reason why we are able to sell some electric two-wheelers right now, because in the absence of public charging system, that's the only way two-wheeler batteries can be charged.
But kids at home, senior citizens, women, family
I agree
members.
with all those. I mean, we need to take a lot of precautions.
It's a wake-up call. It's really a wake-up call for the industry.
They were charging for 1.5. Charging that same battery for 1.5 years. It happened after that. So I don't know if the battery is to be blamed, or the charging is to be blamed, or the company to be blamed.
Or the heat. Everything
Obviously,
together.
there is something gone wrong. But if a thing which is gone wrong after 1.5 years, which normally any legacy players don't give warranty also for that time. So I don't know.
So all the more
not
that-
able to commit unless and until we know what is the deal.
real
This,
facts.
actually, this also brings down to same evaluation. See, when the vehicle is new, it may be performing well, but in course of usage, how the deterioration of various systems happen,
Absolutely.
that also need to be studied.
So it's a new industry. Everything is burgeoning. We need to be very careful how it blossoms.
I am also concerned about the way we have rains in Bombay. What will happen if the electric vehicles get submerged? The battery
Valid
is sealed, but we are not sure about connectors, etc., how waterproof they are.
Yeah, true. Very valid point.
No, just to add to what Mr. Rao was sharing, actually also NMC or LFP is not good or bad. The thing is that what is the integration pattern you have with the cooling system, with the charging protocol. Today, if you see in most of the countries across the world, if you see in the commercial vehicle application, majority of the players in certain areas, depending on the application, are using NMC because you have a higher C rating and discharge and charge rate with the battery cooling, with the right thermal management system.
This thing is important then.
Yes. So
Right
which
cooling,
is
thermal
missing.
management.
So nothing works independent of each other. So the whole architecture of the product has to be seen in totality, irrespective of the battery being independent of that. So I think
Same point, what Rao sir mentioned. If you skip those steps,
Yeah.
then NMC or any technology can be lethal.
yeah. So which could be there for anything in particular.
But another point which, just to say what Mr. Rao was mentioning, the learning curve over a period of time is becoming steeper and steeper. So what we did with the internal combustion or the IC is very different, and yes, the people are and most of the stakeholders are anxious to adopt to the EVs quickly. And the learning curve has to be quicker, and that's why this is adoption becomes quicker in a new technology or anything new which comes forward.
Probably horses were just better. No emission, no explosion, just some cleaning required.
Yeah, I wish we could have stayed with that.
So switching gears and getting in the conversation, friends, a person who has made India's largest telematics company under a decade. Yes, India's largest and biggest. And they have, in fact, whatever problems we have discussed, I believe they have very specialized solutions to counter and fix those problems. So I'm talking about none other but Mr. Katti. So Mr. Katti, I think you are at the best vantage point to start the discussion.
Thank you, Anuj. Good to be here, and then thank you for putting me the last on the list, because after hearing all the eminent panelists, what their thoughts and their opinions and the problems that they have shared, I believe telematics and IoT is there to stay. I always believed that telematics and IoT for the EV ecosystem is an integral part, but then it's all the more emphasized after hearing whatever the gentleman had to say. I mean, from a technology perspective, I feel unlike the IC industry, EV has to adopt telematics and IoT at the inception stage itself because of the use cases that it presents and the kind of solutions that the industry offers. But then there is a need for standardization, because what is very important is what do we build into these IoT protocols, and then how do we ensure safety from the devices that they are going to use, and these are things that we need to address as we go by. Because EV, I mean, although it's not a very pleasant thing to say, with the current war that is raging between Ukraine and Russia, I think the growth of EV is going to be more pronounced, and then it's going to be sure. So anybody who are taking tentative steps all these days are now really looking at EV as a immediate growth factor. And as we grow, the challenges of safety and security are going to be more pronounced. And I come from that enabling community where we make it more safer by giving the right information systems and things like that. IoT and telematics, Anuj and gentlemen here, we are talking about EV financing. So EV financing is one of the important pain points that is, it's a stumbling block for growth today, because the interest rates are high and the down payments, the DPs are high, and the financials are not very comfortable because they don't understand the residual value or the industrial resale value of the vehicle. So I think IoT and telematics is going to solve this issue in a very big way if we actually use it correctly. Because when we look at IoT and at iTriangle, we develop solutions which gives edge analytics, which give real-time informations in terms of battery temperature, motor temperature, and then the SOCs, range anxieties, and things like that. And then these kind of real-time information can be fed to the financiers, can be fed to the buyers who can actually analyze the state of the vehicle and also use this data that IoT and telematics gives in terms of prognostics and diagnostics, engage in preventive maintenance, and then actually enhance the the safety of the vehicle, the life of the vehicle, and then the use cases are immense. I think we are at an inflection point where there is a need for standardization. Along with your thermal management and BMS, I believe IoT also has to be standardized. I come from that ecosystem where India has put a mandate for AIS 140, which mandates all the public passenger transport vehicles to use telematics devices. On one hand, while I'm happy that the government has mandated the use of these devices or these solutions, I'm also not very. I am actually disappointed that the implementation has not been proper. The kind of standardization that we have laid out are extremely basic, that do not address any of the issues what the eminent panelists just voiced. I think that is where we as an industry have to come together, because at best government can be a facilitator. So as domain experts, we need to come together and then put up use cases, give the government what needs to be done, and then give them a detailed analysis of how it is going to spur growth, how it is going to spur safety and security and things like that. I think IoT and telematics will play a major role in this EV ecosystem. And EVs, for example, I believe EV will sell for itself, because of the low running costs. A greener world or a cleaner world is an outcome of what we do. But then actually, I think what will spur the growth, let's not make any mistake about it, at least in India, it's the cost that's going to spur the growth. And IoT and telematics will go a long way in bringing down the cost for all the manufacturers and the creators.
Mr. Kati, some quick use cases of IoT and telematics for safety in an EV, if you can share?
Yeah, very much. It's like, for example, now we are working with a few manufacturers, both truck as well as, two-wheelers, where we have started giving vehicle photos, like, vPhota, where we do reprogramming and programming of BMS, or your cluster and motors. So that where you can, gone are the days when you need to get the vehicle back to the garage. So you can upgrade your firmware over there, you can fix bugs, you can fix any kind of lapses that have happened during production, during engineering, because somebody has rightly mentioned, now it's the era of auto tech companies when it comes to EVs. So the use cases are immense. IoT and telematics will help a long way in increasing the safety, because we have quite a few of these things, like you talk about state of charge, you talk about range anxiety, but then the ECU, I'm particularly very excited about this particular use case where we can upgrade the firmware over there, fix bugs over there, both for BMSs or clusters and things like that, or any onboarded systems on the vehicle.
What about cars getting hacked on the way? Is that a reality, distant reality?
Actually, no, but yes. I mean, when you look at it both ways, because I should share a very interesting this thing. We were a part of a demonstration where we showed some certain policymakers how a vehicle can be hacked through the existing AIS-140 ecosystem. That happens when the proper security and encryption protocols are not built into the standards. That is where I'm emphasizing on the standards. But then good companies who are actually focused on R&D, who are actually focused on delivering a responsible and a deliverable solution, will definitely incorporate a lot of encryptions and securities, which will prevent all these things.
Fair enough. Vidsab, you have been having, a huge fleet of vehicles. Some success use cases you have felt for business and safety because of IoT and telematics?
So I think what my friend just mentioned about the importance of IoT and safety for the operation of EVs, IoTs and that hardware which you install in the vehicle, and the software which gives you all the data about the working of the battery, the performance of the battery, the state of charge, the battery management system, that is extremely critical for this operation, because without that it's impossible to run an EV fleet or EV mobility operation. Impossible.
What about ICE fleet? Why just EV is so important, not in the ICE?
No,
So interestingly, and we have had a robust technology framework in the company, and we have invested heavily on technology for many years, and we have been operating the IC vehicles. It is important there, but there, if you see even today, a large part of the mobility industry operates without having any kind of technology. And they can operate because the fact is that the technology is something which people have gotten used to over the years. They've also less concerns about the range that is available, because the fuel station network has been built over the last 50-60 years. This is something which is new. The government is not setting up any charging network. You must make sure, and customers, users, travelers have gotten used to a certain kind of experience and a certain kind of safety and comfort on the IC vehicles. If you disturb that experience, then you have a problem. So if you do not use IoTs and you do not use the softwares which give you all that data to run your operation well, any kind of mobility operation will not work. And that also, in my understanding, that also will result in a dramatic change in the way that the mobility industry or commercial car industry operates today. If you see the B2C industry, the aggregators part of the industry, that got consolidated some time back, but the B2B part of the industry never got consolidated. There are still hundreds and thousands of operators. It is going to get consolidated because of the EV fleets coming in. And that is because unless you are willing to invest, and unless you understand the importance of technology, and unless you are in a position to have access to a charging network and the data from the system and the algorithms to run all of that, you will not be able to successfully run the operation, you will not be able to have an efficient utilization of the fleet, and then, you know, an EV will not be a great thing to do. So those entities or those players who do not understand this will rather just go and join one of the players who does all of that.
I think beautiful. I think that was really a guru mantra, right from the guru. So IoT telematics are the foundation for any successful EV fleet business. This reminds me, I try to book a EV cab whenever I can. I will not name the company, but it's very difficult to get a desired slot because, you know, they are busy. So whenever I talk to the driver. So I ask him, how's the Josh, how's the work? He says, sir, 2 ड्यूटी 3 ड्यूटी सुबह 2-3 ड्यूटी लंच के बाद 2 घंटे का लंच आराम की नौकरी है ऐसे वाई 2 आवर लंच सर चार्जिंग करनी पड़ती है ना गाड़ी की 2 घंटे लग जाते हैं आराम से बैठो सर खाना भी खा लो सो भी लो
You know, Anuj, I'll tell you, this 2 ghante ka lunch, etc., I will not, I will not react to that. But I'll tell you, you do not need 2 hours for charging. Your system, your technology can tell you what is the time that you have available and what is the nearest charging setup that you have available. It can allow you to make a booking there, even go there for 15-20 minutes, get it charged and finished. That is possible because ultimately in any EV operation, utilization is going to be the key to success, and utilization cannot happen if you do not have the right technology and hardware and softwares giving you all the data and giving you all the advice on when to do what. I mean, 2 hours is a luxury which some people can have, but not going to work forever.
So they might need you as a mentor.
No.
Probably. Okay. So I think let's open it to a Q&A round now. We see hands getting raised. So I see time is up also right there on the screen. So we'll have quick questions. So yes, so can someone give the mic to Nishant and then to Saurav at the back?
So I have 2 specific questions with the panel. So we're talking about very handsome things like telematics, IoT, and such stuff. And I understand they are mandatory, they are required. But then again, as Rao sir mentioned and as Srivastav sir mentioned, that there are 2 parallel forces. One is people also want to catch on to the bandwagon very fast and very quickly. And in the process, they're also skipping certain steps.
What's the question? Just make it quick.
So the question is, how do we make sure that all these things are now actually implemented in letter and spirit in all the cars that we come, so that incidents like fire and such battery thing happening occur less, and the fear thing that gets built up because of such fires does not get built up with
So any specific gentleman here? Or
Well, anybody can
okay,
answer.
so safety.
Well, this fear thing will get over very soon. There is, I'm very sure about it. And as everybody knows, I'm a little bullish about the adoption of electric vehicle. So that's what is my perception is. But yes, the regulations have to come from the government, no doubt about it. That's why I said the incentive has to be dealing with the kilowatt hour only. And that is where to use the thing that the person, the OEM which is selling that vehicle should feel the pinch that they have to follow certain thing more rather than just importing it from China and selling it to the consumer. That is very plain and simple thing which I would like to say. So one has to go into it and the regulation has to come. Yes, the guarded regulation is not that it should put the obstacles in the adoption of EVs or the roadblock for the industry. No, I don't mean to say that. But yes, of course, there have to be some guarded regulation from the government, from the Department of Heavy Industries, or the technical ministries or the departments.
There's a reason why even McDonald's has a Mac Aloo Tikki burger. You have to customize for India. You can't have a BRT. We know what happens. Yeah, Nishant.
Yeah. Anuj, slightly a little lengthy because I'll just elaborate, and my question is to Rao Saab because it's a bit technical. Rao Saab, you very well explained that why NMC is used. I do understand it's got high energy density and the better benefits ranging is more. But then thermal management becomes difficult, especially in a country like India where heat and temperatures are
A
extreme.
little closer to your mouth, Mike.
Yeah, so I personally feel that there are possibly 2 reasons. One, the thermal management because of the cooling is air cooled and all. Can't we think of alternate chemistry to be used in India, especially as we have to localize and, because, and keeping in mind that this raw material is in China, which is not a very favorable destination for India. So that's point number
Why
one.
is China not favorable, Nishan?
Because
What do you have
most of-
against China?
No. So let's not get into that. And the second is, today what I have observed, most of the OEM manufacturers, the startup ones, they procure their three system, the entire system, that is battery pack, BMS, and the charger, possibly from three different vendors. And the integration possibly doesn't happen the way it should happen. So these two aspects, if they are taken care of better, are there any solutions in this direction way forward? Alternate chemistry and,
So
the solution.
alternate chemistry and integration, that's what you're asking.
Alternate chemistry and integration and better cooling system.
No, these alternate chemistries are being developed and they will evolve over time. Right now, what is being followed is lithium-ion LMC or LFP. Each has its own merits and demerits. And some people are now talking about aluminum air batteries, which have its own issues in terms of we need to change the battery after a particular duration. Whole battery needs to be changed. Regarding integration, yes, one of the very important things is how well the various systems being procured from different suppliers are integrated, and it meets all the requirements in terms of Indian extreme conditions, environment conditions, and also usage.
And especially the BMS, because that's the chowkidar of the
Yes.
battery pack. If the
And I
BMS
very
is not up to the quality.
I very strongly believe that over time, the BMS and also motor controller will become the proprietary know-how of the OEMs. It will not be bought from, third party. So they will be fine-tuning it to meet specific requirements, and also that would be like what we call engine tuning right now to get the best out of the engine. Some
Fair-
such
fair
thing will
enough.
evolve over time.
Okay, one question for Ron over here, and then for Vikas, and then we wrap up.
Hi, my name is Ranujay Mukherjee, to those who don't know me. But, I had a question as a layman. I've heard this entire panel talk.
Come on, you're not a layman, come on. Sorry, unacceptable.
Okay. My question was specifically to Sri Anil and Rajiv, that, you talked about fleet management and you talked about a lot of other things. Now, in this country, smaller three-wheelers and two-wheelers, they put a kanta and charge them directly from the supply. That is reality. Number 2 point is, today, if you have, say, out of Rajiv's 10,000 vehicles, if 5,000 go on to EV, and similarly other people get onto the EV bandwagon, what happens to the electric grid supply? Because already in places like Haryana, we are facing an issue. I mean, we are all aware of that, and I'm sure you can comment better on that. So what happens when a large number of EVs actually simultaneously start charging on the grid? Today, you already have a shortage of electricity. So what's the roadmap there?
What happens then? What's the roadmap? So
Want me to react first, or Rajiv ji will take? Huh?
Anyway, so what, if you ask my take on that, so it's something like that. We used to talk about this grid stability and the load on the grid. We also have a paper in Niti Aayog, which I also contributed in that as to how it should be handled. But now in the hindsight, it appears that it was more like the story which goes that the bhediya aaya, but bhediya never came. Something like that. So, friends, I would say that this grid consideration, so far it has not yet had any impact in with any discom. And now the way technology is changing and the way our Stanford professor Tony Seba says and other prophecies are there, the solar generation, the redundancy of grid itself is being talked about. And the micro level grids and the nano level grids and all that. So the whole lot of disruption is going to take place. Now it is a question as to how quickly it does take place. So I think the stakeholders or the people who are playing roles in that should not really look at it be aware, should be cautious about it unless the thing really comes up. That's what my take would be. Yes, of course, if all the vehicles are put at the same time to the grid, then yes, grid imbalance will certainly take place. There's no doubt about it. But then what is the what is the chance or the probability of having that, and in what way it will impact, that is all to be seen. We claim to be a power surplus country, yes, of course, without providing 24/7 good quality power even to the capital of the country. But even then we claim that we are power surplus and we have a lot of generation of the power. And same, this thing will going to take place. And very shortly, as it has been predicted, not being said by the, even in the government circle, it is being accepted that the generation from the fossil fuels will get replaced by the generation from the solar, for the simple reason the market forces will play their role. When you're getting a power 2.5 rupees per unit, then why should you generate it from the fossil fuels for 8 to 10 rupees per unit? That's very clear. So I think we should not be unnecessarily saying that Bhedia is about to come.
Fair enough, fair enough. So, yes, sir.
Just to add to what Anilji said, and you know, I completely agree with him. There is hopefully no bhedia around, but I think there are some very good decisions, policy decisions that are being taken by the government in terms of the energy availability beyond the grid. So the open source policy which now is being permitted, and you know, hopefully the benchmark for that in terms of how much do you draw to be able to take energy from wherever is something which will happen very soon, and that will change the entire dependence of this industry on the grid, because then all the non-fossil fuel energy manufacturers will be able to provide energy to the charging infrastructure entities, and you know, that will probably work. Even now, I don't think there is any great worry. The number of EVs are still very small.
Numbers are very less, no? Yeah.
Yeah, but I think even much before that, these issues will get addressed, and I think Anilji and his colleagues at Niti Aayog are aware of what needs to be done, and you know, effective actions in that direction are being taken.
So just to add to what saying, some facts and figures which would clarify what you were asking, and you would understand that yourself as well, is that majority of the EVs are not charged in the peak hours. They're charged in the off-peak hours, whether at night or in the daytime, which is there. Secondly, the point which we are putting across here is that for the utilization of power, it is very different in each case. Like when you are having a bus, so in that case, there are depots where the power is being brought and you're charging at 700 volts, you're consuming 12 MVA of power, because we are a power company as well. So you work in that fashion, and there you charge at night and in the day. Similarly, we were just hearing 2 hours in the afternoon, the person is napping or eating, right, at that time. So at that juncture, again, you are on off-peak basis, and it actually helps in grid stability as well. And when you are consuming the power at night, that power is actually not being utilized, and it is the cheapest power on the exchange as well, which people do have today. And when you are feeding in the power today and you're looking at energy storage solutions, because we are doing some of them with solar, EV charging, and energy storage across the country integrated. So then in that case, you have off-grid solutions as well. We are not depending on the grid. So there are multiple such opportunities which are there. And a study which was done by one of the international institutions, if 30% of the country moves to electric by 2030, still the power requirement would increase less than 10%. So that clearly gives a perspective that what we are working towards is not something which is rocket science in this case.
And also vehicle to grid charging is also coming in a big way. Let's see. So that's a wrap on the panel. We are 1 minute up. Sorry for that, Gaurav. You will get 1 minute extra once we are through with the panel. Vikas, so sorry for skipping your question. So friends, Vikas is the engineer from IIT Delhi. He has a startup being incubated at IIT Delhi for electric two-wheeler. Please connect to him. He's an innovative guy. देखो आपकी free publicity करा दी question के exchange में, ठीक है? So over to you, Anita ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. That was an interesting discussion, and I hope there will be many action points also. We would like to felicitate you, and to do that, I would like to invite Mr. Gaurav Gupta, Chief Commercial Officer, MG Motor India. So sorry about that, MD. Yeah. Yes, please. Mr. Rajiv Vij, Chairman and MD, Cars on Rent. Mr. Nishant Arya, Vice Chairman, JBM Group. Thank you, gentlemen.